Hi YouTube, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can find me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. Tried to go too fast there. Okay, so the new shop's going great. Last week I finished out the first 4 knives that have been finished in the new shop. It was a custom order. I think you guys will see that next week in the video on unboxing my old sharpening stones. You know, as I went through, you know, that batch of knives, you know, I had to, you know, find stuff and put stuff, you know, figure out where things were, how they were going to work in the new shop, all that kind of stuff. And I finally got to the point where I needed to sharpen these knives. So it was really exciting. I got to unbox, you know, I had a box that had almost all my sharpening stones in it, right? And they'd been in that box for, well, since like mid-December, yeah, something like that. So 4 months-ish, something like that. And you know, I got the new rack built for them and everything, and so they're all tucked safely away. So it was really exciting to get to that. And then so now this week is pretty much getting back into some folders that I had started but I hadn't finished yet. And so right now what we've got is well, just kind of a really messy bench, but this is the first 2 that I decided that I'd go ahead and finish out. These are a nice single blade liner lock based on a Leatherman. I think it was the little bitty blade off the side of a Leatherman, and I kind of like the shape of it, and so I thought, you know, we'll go ahead and make some of those. You know, I haven't cut the locks yet, and I've got to recess these screws, and then clean everything up, pre-grind the blade, and then cut the locks, and then they'll be ready to go ahead and get the blades into heat treat. And so I figured, since and I've got a couple other like that, maybe 6 or 8 of them or so. So I'm going to have to fire up the kiln pretty soon to do the heat treat on those. So I got to thinking about it, and I think we're going to do a whole series on making a new pattern, start to finish, and do the whole thing on YouTube. I was going to say on film, but somebody told me the other day that nobody's used film for like ages, so I guess you would call it digital instead of film, whatever. So, and I was kind of thinking, okay, well, what kind of knife pattern do I want to use? And then yesterday, I was out grabbing some cuttings off of some plum bushes, bush/tree. They're, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 foot tall. They're in clusters, kind of like a bush, but they're taller than most bushes. Anyway, there's some plum trees at my old house, and I was grabbing some cuttings from them, and then an apple tree, and I can't remember what breed of apple tree it is, but there's an apple tree back there also. And I wanted to, at the new place here, I want to start an orchard. You know, we got 2.5 acres, so you know, I want to start an orchard in there. I mean, we got plenty of ground for it, you know, I mean, why not? So anyway, so I was grabbing some cuttings off of these trees, and one of the limbs, you know, when you grab cuttings from those, well, I don't know, I mean, I guess this is the first time, well, this is the second or third time I've tried it. Hopefully this time will work. The first time didn't. But anyway, you're supposed to look at the tree and go, okay, well, what needs trimmed? And I had the branch on the apple tree that was, heck, that big around, and it was, oh, you know, a little bit below waist high. And man, that looked like it was really tough to cut the grass around. So I went ahead and cut that one, and then just figured I'd take the cuttings off it. Well, rather than run out back to the car and grab a big knife, because I didn't have a saw, I ended up using my my little necker. And then while I'm sitting here and I'm, you know, like gnawing through this big old fat apple tree with, I mean, the limb was about the length of the blade, you know. And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, you know, there's been several times that I thought, you know, I made that pattern. I mean, I didn't come up with a pattern. We'll get to that in a minute. But, you know, I use that pattern as a neck knife. But I personally don't carry a knife as a neck knife very often. You know, I mean, I'm wearing one today just because well, just for the sake of the video. But most of the times when I carry a neck knife, it's when I'm kayaking and my hips are down in the boat, and it's kind of tough sometimes to get, twist it around and get to your knife. So, a neck knife works really good in that situation. If I'm doing something, really, really repetitive where I need, an extra edge, so I normally carry, a folding knife in my pocket, and then I carry a Victorinox Tinker in my back pocket. And a lot of times I carry, one of these in a belt sheath. And so if I'm doing an awful lot of work and I'm just going through edges right and left, then I'll throw a neck knife on just because I've got a quick edge. I can use it, work it till it gets dull, put it back in, take it off, toss it off to the side until I sharpen all my knives back up. So these knives, they're on a necker pattern, and they're a necker size because I've got, when I stand, my head goes forward. And so my neck is kind of sloped here. So anytime I wear anything around my neck, be it a necklace, a neck knife, whatever, instead of that cord being down here across my shoulders, it ends up here. And it rides up and it gets to be a pain in the neck, which is probably why my neck knives are so light. They usually come in at... well, it's been so long since I finished one out, I'd have to go look it up. But I want to say they come in under 2 ounces, knife, sheath, cord, everything. So they're extremely light. But most of the time, I carry it as a belt knife. So I thought, that's what we'll do. We'll go ahead and we'll turn this neck knife pattern from a neck knife into a belt knife. And then I'll... we'll go through all the steps of making the knife. This video will be why it's going to be built like that. So first, a little bit of history. So I got the pattern from Murray Carter's book, okay? 101 Knife Designs. And in here, he's got, some things some design ideas of his, some on knife making. And the majority of it has to do with pattern making. And then in the back half of it, see, I've got a whole bunch of notes and drawings of my own stuff in here. In the back part of it, he's got patterns. Now, I highly doubt they're all of his patterns, but, he's got a whole bunch of knife patterns out here. And so, by publishing a book like this, saying, hey, here's a whole bunch of patterns to scale in the back. Like, he wrote the book and drew it out so that you can literally take, say, that knife, 5.7 or 173 millimeter Wabocho. Okay, you can take that knife, put it on a copy machine, or take it to a local Kinko's or copy place, copy the pattern, glue it onto a piece of steel, cut the piece of steel out, grind to the lines in the drawing, and bam, you've got the pattern. All right? So I thought that was really nice of him. I bought the book. I did go to Blade Show, the first and only time I ever went to Blade Show. I'll probably go again. But it's in Atlanta, and it's a long ways away. And as far as having a table, sitting in one spot for very long just drives me about nuts. So anyway, so I did go, and I had heard that Murray was going to be there. So I ended up making him one of the neck knives. It was his pattern, but it was my knife. And that's, I guess it's kind of a little bit tough to explain, but okay, so you grab a pattern like that, right? Like this neck knife pattern. Okay, even though I made this knife off the same drawing off of his book, they're completely different knives. Because I picked up a couple of his and took a look at them, while we were chatting there, and I gave him the knife and said, hey, thanks for the opportunity to purchase your book and all your patterns and everything. Now, I don't know if he threw the knife away or if he ever used it or if he gave it away or whatever. That what he did with it wasn't, I just felt that I needed to say thanks for the patterns. But anyway, when I make these knives, like I was telling you, my posture means that that cord rides up, which means I like a really, really light neck knife. Murray has got fantastic posture. I mean, when he stands up straight and tall, shoulders back, head back. I mean, you can see that the cord on his neck knife was riding right where it was supposed to. So his neck can stand carrying a much heavier knife and it still be comfortable. And the knives that I saw of his were considerably thicker than mine. I mean, they weren't, like axes or anything, but they were thicker. The handle shapes, or the handles, the contouring and everything was a little bit different. The grinds, a little bit different there also. And then I like a little bit more of a point and a little bit less belly and a little bit narrower of a blade than what the original pattern was. There's a couple of other differences. I want to say that my sheath material, I use thinner Kydex. This was that might have actually been the first one of this pattern that I ever made. Since this one, I use the solid rivets. I've since gone to the hollow rivets, and then they just hold the sheath closed. They are not the attachment part for the neck cord. He runs his neck cord through the Kydex rivets. I make I run them through the loops that are made up here, and then they've got this little safety feature right here, so that if you do, like say you're up on a ladder, I don't know, you're working on a roof or a gutter, or painting or something like that, or let's say you're up somewhere high and you jump down and that neck cord gets caught on a branch or a nail or something like that, and it goes to choke you. Well, as you pull, these little pieces right here, I don't know if you'll be able to see that, because I don't want to pull too hard, because you only get about 3 or 4 uses out of each one of these before they quit holding. But it'll separate and it'll release that knot, and it gives you a chance. I've tested it before, and like I said, you get 2 or 3 uses out of it. It's kind of like a safety on a rifle. It should work, but boy, act like it's not there, okay? But it does give you a chance. So anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to make this knife a little bit bigger, okay? We're probably going to stay with 3/32 inch stock. Well, okay, first of all, we need to talk about how every knife maker makes their own particular knife, okay? So this particular pattern, I'm going to make it as if it's for me, okay? And I think when you buy a knife like that, you get the most of what that knife maker has to offer. Because, somebody calls me up and they say, hey, I want this particular, type kitchen knife, right? Well, if I don't use that particular kitchen knife, then I do my best to make sure that you're going to have a knife that performs as good as what I can give you, but I don't use it. So, and there's a big difference there between making a knife that you use most days, or a couple of weeks out of the year or something like that, but you've got hours and hours and hours into using that knife on a certain group of materials, versus, okay, well, this is kind of what I think this should work like. Kind of like fillet knives, right? I don't normally catch fish that are big enough to fillet. I'm just not that great a fisherman, right? So when I make a fillet knife, I'm basing that on the first fillet knife I ever made. This guy said, hey, I want you to make me a fillet knife. I told him, I said, hey, I'm not that great a fisherman. I don't fillet fish all that much. Kind of outside of my realm of expertise. He said, that's okay, make it like your boning knife. I said, well, okay, I do like a flexible boning knife. So I went to King Soopers and I got a couple of the biggest fish that they had. I took those fish home, I took a couple of different boning knives with different flexes, and then I watched some YouTube videos and I boned those fish out. based on those half a dozen fish that I boned out, I decided, okay, well, we need a little bit more flex here, we need a little bit less flex there, you know, and then I made another couple of changes to my boning knife design, and bam, we have a fillet knife. Okay, this knife right here, well, no, this knife I carried for, heck, a year or better. This knife right here was the prototype for 440C stainless. So this was, you know, I decided to start off in 440C stainless. I made the knife in this, or made this knife in 440C stainless. After I worked up a good heat treat, I carried it for a year. This knife is dressed out, I want to say 3 or 4 antelope. Goodness knows how many cottontails. I think I did a pig and a lamb with it. Besides being carried every day for, like I said, about a year, for opening mail, cleaning my fingernails, peeling apples, you know, whatever it was that I ran into, I needed to cut with it. Okay, so this design, well, just based between these two knives, that's 2 years with that design and 2 years with those two different steel types. This knife right here is another year, you know. So there's 3 years worth of time with this particular design, all right? So now after 3 years, I've got some pretty good ideas about what I like, what I don't like about them. Now, to take that a step farther, what do I use a knife for? All right, I live in Wyoming, Cheyenne, Wyoming. Population 60,000, I think. We are pretty close to the Colorado front line in Denver. I do not like going to Denver very much. That place is entirely too big and too many people too close together for my taste. But it's not like I live in Buffalo, Wyoming, where there's 3,300 people for the whole town either. Cheyenne is rural, but not rural like Buffalo or Story, Wyoming, okay? So we do have ranchers here. I've got a couple of friends that are ranchers. They've got, you know, a section or two, you know, 1 square mile or two, something like that. So fairly small operations. There are bigger ones, but I don't have any that are friends like that. I'm not a cowboy, even though this is cow country. You know, when friends that have horses and cows and stuff call me up because they need an extra hand, I go out and I help them, but I don't own a pair of cowboy boots. So I don't deal with livestock a whole lot, except for mostly, you know, to help somebody move some, or, you know, if I'm picking them up to put in the freezer, you know, I'll go out there, drop them, dress them out, you know, put them in the truck, take them home, hang them, cut them up, right? Also do an awful lot of maintenance work. You know, painting, although I hate painting. Painting, plumbing, you know, fixing doors, I mean, property maintenance type stuff, right? You know, handyman and whatever. Big outdoorsman, you know, I hunt and fish an awful lot. When I do go like elk hunting, you know, when it's, you know, a ways out, I usually carry, and I don't have one with me at the moment, but, you know, a hunting knife, you know, 4-inch class hunting knife with a full guard, you know, something like that. But most of the time, I'm around town. Most of the time I'm working out of the shop, and living and working in town. So living and working in town, the type of knife that I need the most, like I told you, the Victorinox Tinker, you know, because you got your can opener and a pocket knife and everything. And then a normal, you know, folding knife, you know, that can open fast and it can open slow, whichever one. All right. Doc and Wyatt are chasing the ball. And then the other one is, a lot of time I like using a small fixed blade knife. Okay. Now the way I carry that, I'm going to bring you down here. Okay. Now the way I carry that is right here. All right. Now don't mind the extra weight here. I've been I got a bad stomach, and so they've had me on steroids for about the last 4 months, and I've been gaining a lot of weight. But anyway, so you take this, rides nice and high, really tight to my body. It doesn't flop around. It hides very, very well with a t-shirt. You know, so it doesn't attract a whole lot of attention. And yet it's it's really quick and easy to pop out, right? Since it rides so high, and a lot of you guys that carry a handgun will carry a handgun or carry a fixed blade on a regular basis, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. When you sit in a car, especially a car that's got very form-fitted seats, you know, when it sits up real high like this, when you sit down, that sheath doesn't push up on your belt all the time. Okay, and then since it's very flat, even the seats that kind of hug you, it doesn't push it into your side very much. So anyway, so that's the type of fixed blade here that we're going to go after. Okay, now the changes to this pattern right here. Now this pattern is 7 inches overall length with a 2 3/4 cutting edge and 3 3/8 to the very tip of the scales right there. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take this and make it a little bit beefier and a little bit bigger, a little bit longer in the blade, because we have room. You know, I mean, you know, we have quite a bit of room here. We can go an inch longer than this, and I think it would still fit into that nice, comfortable in-town knife that's nice and discreet, and yet very handy, easy to clean. So when you dress out a trout at the local fishing pond, you know, you can just go ahead and wash it off in the lake there until you get home. But there's no, you know, like a folding knife, there's no mechanism, there's no pivot, there's no lock, there's none of that stuff to get fish slime up into. All right. That way you save this knife for, well, I guess whatever else you want to use it with, and then get this one all nice and dirty because it's easier to clean. So let's go ahead and go look at the pattern board. This is a really cool thing with the new shop, you know, so this is my grinding room, and I thought, well, you know, since I got this big old wall that I can't really put anything here because there's the door to the bathroom that opens up and, you know, closes. So we can't put anything there because then it'd block off the door. So I finally have a pattern wall. Now, this is the majority of my patterns, I think, but I want to say I've got a couple of more boxes that's got some in it. And then these also don't include the customs, you know, or the freestyle type you know, type blades that I've made just one-offs and everything. But, you know, I mean, an awful lot of these knives I've made, oh goodness, there's knives in here, or patterns up in here that I've made at least hundreds of, if not close to 1,000. And there's patterns up in here that I've only made 1 or 2 of. But anymore, because of that book that Murray wrote, 101 Knife Designs, he talked about the importance of patterns and pattern making. And, you know, maybe one of these days I'll have to make a video just on patterns. But yeah, patterns are absolutely amazing. So, let's see, what we've got up here is we've got this one here is my perfect neck knife. He's got one in here that he calls it his perfect, but this one's the one that I like the most. So we'll take this one, and then we'll take that one that's a little bit bigger, and then we'll take this one that's a little bit bigger than that. Yeah, so we'll just take these 3. Okay, so we've got these 3 right here, and we should be able to stack them up on top of each other. Yeah, look at there, we've got I think that's about perfect right there for you to see. Okay, so we've got the 3 patterns stacked on top of each other, and you can really see how much difference there is between the 3 of them. you can tell that his patterns are following that same curve, you know, on the belly. And mine have kind of varied from that a little bit. But you can tell how they're just a little bit different in the lengths. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put these 3 on the bench here. And then while I'm working today on these liner locks, I'll just come over here and, you know, grab a hold of one, pick it up. Right now that feels good, but it feels too big. I like the blade length. I think I want it narrower because I do like a narrower knife. And the handle to be a little bit smaller. Of course, that's a left-hand feel. You know, the right hand's kind of telling me the same thing. This one right here, this one says wherever on it. I think I made a small batch of these knives. I called them wherever knives because to me they were too big and too heavy for a neck knife. But I did make them with the Kydex, you know, the hollow rivets. I figured I ended up selling all of them. I think I made like 6 of them, but they didn't have neck cords because to me they were too heavy to be a neck knife. But I figured you could strap them to like a shoulder strap on a pack or a life vest or, you know, underneath the console of a car, you know, wherever you would need, you know, a nice handy knife of this size. I think that right there is getting pretty close, but still a little bit less in the handle and a little bit less in the blade width, a little bit more pointy point. That's going to be pretty close. So what I'm going to do is, like I said, I'm going to leave these knives right here on the bench, and then throughout the rest of today, I'll just come over and pick them up at different times, you know, handle them, you know, maybe I'll sharpen a pencil with my normal knife or something, you know, make a couple of cuts, decide what kind of changes I want to make, really firm them up. And then the next video is going to be on making the pattern. So then we'll go ahead and we'll take these 3. We'll get a piece of steel, a piece of pattern steel, and then we'll go ahead and we'll make the pattern, you know, scribe the pattern out, make the changes to it, and then we'll go ahead and grind it, make the pattern, and then we'll go ahead and use the pattern to make a couple of blades out of. And I'll explain a whole bunch of what, maybe we'll do that with the pattern video, and then I'll explain how come Murray changed my whole thoughts on making patterns. You know, at first I was like, patterns? Man, I don't know about that, you know, because that kind of limits you a little bit. But on the other hand, making patterns allows you to duplicate if you want to. And that is really good for a knife maker. So, and that's all I'll say on the patterns. Yeah. Yep. So anyway, so that's what we're going to do. I think it's going to be an exciting video series. I think maybe we'll do, I don't know, we can do half a dozen of them or so. Then I'll keep one of them and carry it around for, you know, a couple weeks or a year, see if I continue to like it, and then maybe put the others up on the website, so if anybody wants one, it's there for them. Hope you enjoyed the video. Again, this is Joe Calton from Calton Cutlery. You can find me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we will see y'all next time.